Thank you. Greetings and welcome to our second global conference session, Africa, Real Estate Market and Development Opportunities. Thank you, Jakiva, and once again, thank you to the Chicago Association of Realtors and the Chicago Association of Realtors Global Council for sponsoring this truly exciting event. We are very fortunate today that Raju Bouchard, COO and Director of Name Dua Homes, is with us, in addition to Ernest Hansen, Director of Beaufort Developments. We'll get started with Raju's presentation. Name Dua Homes is a real estate development company based in Accra, Ghana. Raju is of Indian origin, born in Gran Canaria, Spain. Property development and finance have always been very close to his heart, with 3 decades of experience spanning across Europe, the Middle East, India, and currently Africa. Furthermore, Raju is a trustee of Bouchard Charitable Trust, which was founded in India by his late father in 1972. He is also a member of the board of Smart Life, a nonprofit organization helping blue-collar workers in Dubai, as well as a member of the local advisory board of the Jumeirah College in Dubai. I now turn the presentation over to Mr. Bouchard.
Thank you very much, Lynn, for the introduction. And first of all, good early afternoon to the Chicago Association of Realtors and its guests. I hope you're all keeping safe at these times, and we'd like to thank you for inviting us to be part of this conference. And we are very excited to see the interest that everybody has in Africa, especially in the property market. I also want to thank Jakiva and Sarah for all her help, and everybody else at the Chicago Association of Realtors. Please accept my apologies on behalf of our CEO, Kiran Daswani, who is not able to attend the conference today, so you have to bear with me for the next 15-20 minutes instead of her. So to your loss, sorry. The significance of Africa in the business the significance of Africa in the world economy is growing, and the real estate sector is an important part of this economy. Next, please. Next slide. Yeah, the basic of any business is demand for a product. The main source of demand is the population. So let's look a little bit of the demographics of Africa. Next slide, please. So you see these lines, and this is the growth, population growth for the rest of this century. You can see 4 flat lines at the bottom. You can see a green line at the top. That's Asia, which is peaking up and then slowly coming down. The only line that's increasing continuously is the purple line. The purple line is Africa. So we're looking at a population right now of 1.3 billion, expected by the end of the century to 4.3 billion. Could I have the next slide, please? So the population, as I said, is 1.3 billion at the moment in 2020. I said 4.3 end of the century, but by 2050, 2.7 billion is the number. But the most important part of the number, especially for us in the property business, is the urban residents, 1.5 billion. So 1.5 billion, I think it's 5 times the population of the US. So this is the urban population that we're looking into. More people, more demand. This is just basic common sense. But let's look at the population figures. Next slide, please. So as I said, urban population, but a big important thing is the tertiary education enrollment. In 2016, Africa had 8 million people enrolled in tertiary education, that's university and above. By 2030, that's just 10 years down the road, that's 2-3 development cycles, 43 million. That's 5.5 times as much. That's a big growth in educated population, leading into management roles, leading to higher income in the household, leading to higher purchase power for houses. Next, please. Now, I'm just giving you a bit of the demographics of Africa. I'd like to talk a little bit about the economy. So I'll give you some economic data. Could I have the next slide, please? The GDP was 2.58 trillion in 2020. This, compared to the US with a purchase power parity, comes to 6.36 trillion. 6.36 trillion US dollars is the GDP equivalent. Now, if you look at the GDP growth, maybe the graph is a bit small, but the bars reflect Africa. Africa is growing. The other lines are coming down, but our growth is still above the average world growth, even above the other developing countries. The only one above us is China, which has a bigger growth. But Africa is growing. The growth is coming up all the way. Could I have the next slide, please? Now, you can see the foreign direct investment. The foreign direct investment in Latin America and Caribbean went down 6%. In developing countries, it went up, but 2%. In Asia, 4%. But in Africa, 11% to 46 billion. This is foreign direct investment. And it's expected, so in 2018, it grew 11%. Those are the last figures I got. But it's expected to grow 15% annually from then on. Whereas you see other emerging economies with almost flat rates or negative rates like Latin America. Next slide, please. So out of all the investment in 2018, 33 billion went to manufacturing. Now, manufacturing is the pillar of any economy. Here, we have manufacturing employs everything from unskilled labor to skilled labor. It starts the production cycle. So when you have manufacturing taking place in your nation, or in your country, or in your continent, it leads to a need for service industry. You need to market those goods. You need to transport those goods. You need to sell them. You need the retail store. So all the economy is starting there. You're not depending on imports. So you're creating real GDP within your continent. So this manufacturing figure seems to be going up, the investment in manufacturing. I recently read an article. We all look at China as a big manufacturing country. Well, one Chinese manufacturer is investing $1 billion in Africa because he's finding that the manpower is still cheaper for him in Africa, so he can produce more competitively. And this is that was one example, but there are many other Chinese factories coming here to produce, to sell from here. And talking about selling from here, we have the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. This covers a variety of nations within the African continent. And the whole idea is that 90% of the goods produced could travel between these countries without any tariffs or imports. So if you come and establish yourself as a manufacturing company in one of these countries, your goods can just flow throughout. Similar that would happen inside the United States or inside the European Union or inside any big power. So we know the big powers, when they're united, it's even stronger. And this continental free trade will also allow for the free movement of people and capital. So if you do establish yourself in one country, you can easily open a branch in another country within all the countries in the agreement signed. It's not all the countries, but a lot of them are doing it. So now population is growing. That's brilliant. Economy is growing. So the future looks bright. But now I want to look a little bit at the real estate market in particular. So if I could have the next slide, please. And the next one. So the real estate market is looking very healthy in Africa. Demand is going up. People are buying more properties. I have divided the market into three major sections. One is the local populations, the African born here and lived here all his life. The other one is the African expat, the African who's migrated outside and is living out, but might want to invest here. I'll look at each one of these in detail. And then you're having the foreign expats who are living in Africa, but who are also buyers. After many years, they decided to start buying. We'll look at each one of these in more detail. Could I have the next click? The same slide, thank you. So as I mentioned, when I talked about education, there's been a big growth in middle class. And the middle class is what drives the economy, is what drives consumption. I recently was speaking to a gentleman here who has about 45 outlets, and he's an expat. He actually mentioned that about 25 years ago, all his outlets were managed by expats. But today, they're all managed by local Africans, except one of them. That shows where the African manpower is getting. They're getting educated, they're going to management levels. This increases their household income. Likewise, we have the double income family, where both are professionals. If you saw the slide I showed you of university, it was a man and a woman. So the women are getting access to studies, they're educated. And you have all households creating double income at skilled level. I'm not talking unskilled level. This allows them to get into the housing market easier. Here itself, I don't want to personalize with companies, but in Nyamidua, apart from the unskilled labor out on the site, at office and admin, more than 70% of our staff is female. So this is what's happening. They're educated, competent, just as much as all of us, which never existed in Africa. So the double income household is a great thing. And now I'm talking about the dormitory cities. As infrastructure has improved, communications has improved, light water facilities are improving, we get a lot of dormitory cities or dormitory neighborhoods around the capitals or around the major cities. So living in the city and the capital can be expensive, but if within a 30-minute commute, you can build these dormitory cities or dormitory communities, doesn't have to be another city, you're creating houses at much affordable rates, like it's everywhere else in the world. But it's not the shacks that you would imagine because they're outside the cities. These are good gated communities, giving good product available at a reasonable price. Okay, my next click, please. A big important market is the African expats living abroad. We know 2019 was classified as the year of return, celebrating 400 years of the first Africans migrating to the US of A. And a lot of people came back. People who wanted to come back to Africa, oh, I'll go next year when it's the year of the return. And they came back. They were very pleased with what they saw. And a lot of people from that moment started investing. So the year of return did a lot for the economy, specifically where we are now in Ghana. And we had a lot of inquiries and deals closed because of that. So we have returning home. So they've made the money, they've saved money, and they realize now they can have a decent job or even create a business back home in Africa. And if they do, they will get more value for their dollar. So they're returning full time. Then we also have the expats living abroad who may be buying a house for the future. They say, we might want to retire back in our home country. So there's a lot of people buying those houses. A lot of them also saying, no, we want to spend some time back at home. So let's buy a holiday home. Maybe when the winters are harsh, we can go and spend that time in our country and then come back to be with the rest of our family at other times. So there's a holiday home investment. Some of them are just helping out their relatives who don't have enough equity to buy a house, or maybe buying a house for their parents. And then there's the pure investment. The Africans living abroad can see that they get a better return for their money if they invest here. Rental return and capital appreciation. So we have all these African expats who are living abroad, and these are few of the reasons why they would invest here. If I can have a click on the next slide, please. Then we have the foreign expats who are living in Africa. Traditionally, they would come here with companies or to set up business, and they were living eternally on rental property. Political stability, not sure if this is their country, we're here for 1 year, or actually we're here for 2 years, we're here for 5 years, it's been 20 years, our children were born here, we're going to stay here for the rest of our life. Why should we carry on renting? Let's buy. So this is a big part of the market now. Foreign expats who basically feel at home in Africa, and they're buying instead of renting. Then there is the people in the West who've never lived in Africa, but have traveled on holiday, and they've seen it, and they like it, and they want to buy a holiday home to spend some time here. Then there's also the expats who live here, who also want a holiday home. There's a lot of good beaches, beautiful resorts, and they can buy a home and have good quality of housing. And the expats living here can see that if they take the money and maybe invest in another country, returns on rental could be 2 to 3%. In Ghana, we speak above 8%. Plus, we have incentives, tax incentives, which give us low tax rate for the individuals renting properties. So it makes it very easy to invest in property in Ghana and in Africa. Next slide, please. So the biggest boom to the housing market is the mortgages. So mortgages, very complicated before. Could I just have a next click? I'm going to speak a little bit of the pros of the mortgages. Sorry, I apologize for that. Am I back?
Yes, Raju, you are back. Thank you.
Okay, just let me, I just have to get, okay. So as I was saying, the mortgages, it's a great product for the banks. So the banks are investing in this side of their business. Also, as you see the rise of the middle class, they cannot wait for all their career to make the money to buy a house. So they're accessing the mortgage market. Again, both of them, husband, wife, making good amount of money, can get a mortgage easily. We're seeing banks giving us quick replies. We can get a reply from a bank in a reasonable time, sometimes a week. They're approved fast and easily. We know the documentation. So once mortgages are easily available, it helps the housing market. Also, the equity required has gone down. It's still very high numbers compared to the West. You still require around 20% equity, but it's still easier for a lot of them. So many times if they don't have it, maybe they're going to family loans or something like that to put up their part of the equity towards the purchase of a home. The cons of the mortgage, if you can just click on the next slide, please. The high interest rates. Yes, we know that interest rates are high in our local currency in most places in Africa. And I hope the interest rates go down. If not, we can have structured products. We know in Europe in the early 2000s, in Spain, I know as a developer there, the bank structured products against the Japanese yen. Japanese yen were having a 0% interest. So they could structure a mortgage at a much lower rate to the euro rate. And a lot of people took those mortgages. You're worried about the currency risk? Those were balanced out. They were hedged against them. So the currency risk was there, but it was capped. There was always a maximum you could lose in the risk of currency, and your rate of mortgage could be lower. So I'm hoping the banks here soon look at alternatives to give us lower interest rates and increase. Even the cons is the equity we required. I use it as a pro. That equity required is less, but as I said, it's still 20%. So 20% can still be high for a lot of people. And sometimes they have to go for family loans, as I mentioned before, in order to give that down payment, to show that equity, so the bank actually gives them the money. The bank actually wants to see that transfer of money done from their account before they give the mortgage. They want to see the commitment. But mortgages is the way future to boost the economy, the property real estate economy in Africa. And it's going in the right direction. There's no doubt of that. Next slide, please. One more click, I think. Yeah, foreign investors. I'm going to look at the real estate market as developers. So coming to Africa, I think one of the things I mentioned was the high interest rates. But if foreigners come into Africa and they can raise money in their home countries, either through their own banks, through private equity, through a group of investors, they can come into the market with a lower cost of capital. Click, please. So yes, so they can raise capital internationally at much lower interest rates. And this will lead them to much higher returns on their capital. The returns here, as it is, are higher than in the developed world. And if you add to that you have a low cost of capital, your returns can be quite significant. Next slide, please. Next. I've just spoken briefly. I was talking more about the developers, coming to invest in Africa as a developer, is build properties to sell them. But I did, towards the end of the slide, I just wanted to speak about investing as a landlord, as pure property investment, looking at rentals. The rentals in Ghana, where I'm presently, are above 8%. If you have a low cost of capital, you add the 8%, you add the capital gains prospects, you have a very high possibilities of return. So this is a great market. And as the country is as the continent is developing, you will find that there'll be a big demand for offices, factories, so investors can come buy finished product, finished office buildings, finished factories, and lease them out to companies coming from abroad. And this could give them a great rate of return. We see, you just drive around any city in Africa and you can see a lot of modern office buildings with banks and international companies leasing from there. So I'm actually almost done, and I'm going to finish my presentation repeating a slide that I put at the beginning. So if you could just click on the slide, I think I'll get a repeat the population. I need to really repeat this. 1.35 billion to 2.7 billion in the next 30 years. 1.5 billion urban residents. Housing is needed. There is income to buy the houses, so the market is booming. There is a real demand, because there's a real demand. People are not just buying second housing, they're buying their first homes. And this is what creates real demand in the property sector. That's all I have from me. And now I think I'll be open to questions and answers. And you can just put the last slide where I'm just putting, once again, thank you. Click to the next slide. Just thank you to the Chicago Association of Realtors for having us. That's my email. If you have any questions that I can help you with, please do. The rest of my details will be with the CAR. You can get my phone number, any details you want. And I'm always there for any questions and any help we can give to all of you. Thank you very much. Over to you, Lynn.
Thank you very much for that robust presentation. A lot of information and food for thought for us, but thank you so much. We do have one question I see. You mentioned the growth in economic activity in Africa approaching that of the US economy. Given the culture, ethnic and regulatory differences between the sub-Saharan Africa and the rest of the continent, how can an investor best select a place to begin? Also, in which countries are regulations on property ownership and tax the most advantageous for foreigners, and where are the greatest risks?
Okay, the laws are different in each country. I'm going to give you a little bit about Ghana, where I am now. It's property registration is getting very efficient. So security is there on your property. All our sales, the subleases are done through lawyers and registered. So there's no problem with that. As far as taxation, you can actually go to the GRA, the Ghana Revenue Authority webpage, and the taxes are very clear on what you need to pay. It's fully transparent. So that's where the economy is going, to a much more transparent and more clear economy. So all those doubts that foreigners, investors had, and the fear can disappear with all this. So everything is transparent. It's on the internet, exactly what tax rate you have to pay for property rental. I was looking at the page yesterday, and all your registration is being totally digitalized. So Ghana is moving to full digitalization for registration. So you'll be able to look up who's the owner, you'll have full security. For those in doubt, I always recommend maybe a gated community as opposed to buying land if you're not there, because you have a very much clearer title.
How much is the average to high-end home in Ghana? They said the rates are high, but what is the range of interest rates?
Interest rates, the rates of the homes in prices or the interest rates? The interest rates are, all of you sit back because you're not going to, this figure is going to maybe alarm you, but interest rates are 11 to 12%. Maybe they'll be shocking for you, but it's, I remember in Spain, my first development was at 16% mortgage rates. So rates do change, but it's what the market has. As far as pricing of housing, if you go to the center of Accra, you can be, $5,000-$10,000 a square meter. If you go further away, like I said, you can go to the dormitory cities to get better value. You can go to 1,000, 1,200 a square meter. Sorry, I talk in meters. Divide by 10 for your square foot price.
Thank you. Jakiva, you want to take the next one?
Sure. I have a question, and personally, so you mentioned foreign expats, and I'm just curious as to if you could walk us through the process. So I'm a US citizen and I want to purchase in Africa, or our members, they have a client that would like to purchase in Africa. Can you walk us through what that process looks like on how to purchase land or purchase property in Africa?
So first of all, I'd like to say I was a couple of minutes late. We were meant to connect at 10:45 and I connected at about 10:46. I was just sitting in the office next door with a gentleman from Washington, D.C., who wanted to buy properties in our state. The process is simple. You send the money, you're just one person, you register, you get yourself a tax number, and you register the property in your name. I'm talking about not applying for a mortgage. Now, if you're applying for a mortgage as a non-resident and an expat, the amount of equity required would be higher than a resident and then a local. But the process is as simple as any. We've sold the majority of our present development to expats. So it's equal as a resident, just as simple. There's no complication.
Then you own the property after you make that purchase.
So you own the lease. You own the lease. So I don't know if you know the system in the UK also. A lot of the property is on lease. So basically you own it for the next 85, 100, whatever the lease is. You buy the lease on the land, so you're buying a property leasehold. There could be some freehold, but a lot is leasehold. Very similar to the British system.
Perfect, thank you. We have a couple of more questions and then we'll close this out. Are there any restrictions on how many properties a foreigner can purchase or hold?
The person who was just with us wanted to buy multiple properties. He was sitting with us, he wanted to buy the rest of the development we had.
Oh, yay.
So there's no limit. There's no limit to what you can buy.
That's awesome. Okay, we've heard a lot about corruption in some of the governments of African nations, including the necessity of paying bribes, etc. How does an investor negotiate such difficulties in order to complete a successful investment purchase? And where is the problem worse and where is it at best? Or if you can share your
first of all, when it comes to bribes and corruption, I believe it's a worldwide phenomenon. In some places, it's more transparent and more obvious, but in other places, more hidden under the lobby system in Spain, under different systems. But it's a world. But right now, our development, I don't know. Just the gentleman sitting with us. There's nothing under the table. We got a license. We paid for it. Paid for it to the town council. We're selling everything. All the payments are done through the bank. Registration is done officially. So yes, there is corruption in Africa, and it will be there for many years. But as far as property, it's getting cleaner. The amount you pay for it is in the sublease, and that's what you register for.
And our last question, someone just took the green designation. I don't know if you're familiar with NAR designations. They offer educational designations and certifications for different types. So the green designation, you can get your CIPS, you can get accredited buyers certification, et cetera, et cetera. Is Africa presenting itself as a hub for green building technologies?
Definitely. I think if you see, there was a map I saw a long time ago that we just took part of the Sahara Desert and dedicated that full of solar panels. You could generate electricity for the whole world. So our present development has solar panel installation, pre-installation in the whole development, and I think a lot of people are moving forward in that direction. We're not as green as other nations, but a lot of them are doing it.
Perfect.
The final question here is, are there organized bodies like the Chicago Association of Realtors to help navigate the buying process?
Sorry, I didn't get you.
Are there organized bodies such as the Chicago Association of Realtors to help navigate the buying process?
So we normally help all our clients. So whenever they come, we submit it's a standard documentation. So we hand it to the 3-4 institutions we work with, and we give them the paperwork, and they will decide, they will take it for approval, and we do a bit of the follow-up. So as a developer, if you look at a lot of the banks, even in their websites and their presentations, most of the mortgages they give are either individuals going to them or developers actually acting as their intermediaries, because it is us. So the client comes, I want to sell the house. I want to make sure he gets his loan. So it's us who, our sales team is many times calling. So I don't know if there's organized bodies strictly for that, but we do it. We don't charge for it. Our business is to sell the houses.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, from my understanding, there's no licensing law in Africa like it is here in the States. So there are organized bodies, but they don't mimic NAR, from my understanding.
Correct.
Well, thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. Thankfully, it's recorded, so we can all refer back to this great information that you presented today. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next, Ernest